Imagine this. It's 1929 in Nigeria under British colonial rule. The air is thick with tension. The colonial government has slapped heavy taxes on the men, pushing families deeper into poverty. Life is already hard, but it's about to get worse. This isn't just a story from a history book. It's the story of thousands of brave women who decided enough was enough. In the bustling markets and quiet villages of southeastern Nigeria, a dangerous rumor began to spread like wildfire. The British, not content with taxing the men, were now planning to tax the women. For these women, who were the backbone of their families and local economies, this was the final straw. This wasn't just about money, it was about dignity. It was an attack on their very existence. So, what did they do? They organized, in secret at first, under the cover of night, women from different villages, different markets, and even different ethnic groups like the Igbo, Ibibio, and Andone started talking. They were mothers, traders, farmers. They weren't politicians or soldiers, but they shared a common sense of injustice. They met in market squares, by riverbanks, and in their compounds, their whispers of dissent growing into a roar of defiance. This wasn't just a protest, it was the birth of a movement. They used their traditional communication networks, sending palm leaves to signal meetings, symbol that something big was about to happen. Unity was their newfound weapon. Their methods of protest were as unique as they were powerful. They didn't have guns or modern weapons. They had their voices, their bodies, and their culture. Thousands of women, sometimes tens of thousands, marched together. They weren't just walking. They were a moving, singing, chanting force of nature. Their songs weren't just melodies, they were anthems of resistance, filled with lyrics mocking the colonial authorities and their local collaborators, the Warren Chiefs. And they brought out a powerful cultural practice known as sitting on a man. This was a traditional form of protest where women would gather at a man's compound, usually someone who had wronged the community, and they would sing, dance, and basically make a huge scene, shaming him publicly until he repented. Now, they were sitting on the colonial chiefs and officials. Imagine thousands of women surrounding your home, day and night, singing songs about your greed and corruption. It was a potent form of psychological warfare designed to embarrass and ridicule the authorities into submission. They would chant, bang on the chiefs' doors, and sometimes even tear down their fences. It was a declaration that these men had lost the respect and consent of the women they were supposed to lead. The protests started peacefully, but as the women's demands were ignored, their frustration boiled over. The movement escalated. The mass marches turned into direct confrontations. They targeted the symbols of colonial power. They stormed native court buildings, centers of colonial administration that they saw as corrupt and unjust. They burned court records, releasing prisoners who they felt were unfairly jailed. They also targeted European-owned trading stores, which they believed were exploiting them with unfair prices. This wasn't mindless destruction. It was a calculated attack on the colonial system itself. The women, armed with little more than sticks and their unbreakable spirit, were directly challenging the authority of the British Empire. They tore down colonial flags and chased away court clerks for a few weeks in November and December of 1929. These women were in control, creating chaos for the colonial regime across a vast region. The British were stunned. They had never faced a resistance like this, especially not from women, whom they had dismissed as powerless. The colonial government's response was predictable and tragic. They saw the women's actions not as a legitimate protest against injustice, but as a riot that had to be crushed. They panicked. Colonial police and troops were called in. Faced with thousands of unarmed women, they were ordered to fire in towns like Opperbo and Calabar. The peaceful air of protest was shattered by the sound of gunfire. The women were singing and chanting one moment, and the next they were falling. They were mothers, sisters, and daughters, mowed down simply for demanding to be heard. More than 50 women lost their lives in the crackdown, with many more injured. It was a brutal and horrifying end to their protests. The British had shown their true face, that their rule was maintained not by consent, but by brute force. The tragedy of the event sent shockwaves across Nigeria and even back to Britain. So what was it all for? Did their sacrifice mean anything? Absolutely. The ABA Women's War, as it's often called, was a watershed moment. In the short term, the plan to tax women was dropped. The British were forced to reevaluate their system of indirect rule, and many of the corrupt warrant chiefs were removed from power. The colonial government had to admit that it had completely misunderstood the role and power of women in Nigerian society. But the long-term legacy is even more profound. The 1929 protest was one of the first major challenges to colonial authority in West Africa. These women, with their courage and ingenuity, lit a fire. They showed that the British Empire was not invincible. They inspired a new generation of nationalists and freedom fighters, both men and women, who would eventually lead Nigeria to independence 3 decades later. The ABA Women's Riot is more than just a historical event. It's a powerful testament to the strength of collective action and a landmark moment in the history of women's rights, not just in Nigeria, but around the world. It proves that ordinary people, united by a common cause, can challenge even the most powerful systems of oppression. The story of these incredible women reminds us that the fight for justice is never in vain. Their voices, silenced by bullets in 1929, continue to echo through history, inspiring us to this day. Thanks for watching. If you found this story as powerful as we did, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more hidden histories. Let us know in the comments what other historical events you'd like us to cover. See you next time.